Hello there, you're watching Breaking Views on NDTV. I'm Maha, Siddiqui. The governor's role and responsibility is in the democratic polity are once again under scrutiny, this time of the Supreme Court. Hearing the Sena versus Sena case, the Supreme Court made strong observations on the former governor of Maharashtra, Bhagat Singh Koshyari's role in the Maharashtra vote that unseated the Uddhav Thackeray-led government last year. The court said the governor must be conscious that calling for a trust vote may lead to the toppling of a government. The governor should not enter any area which precipitates the fall of a government. People will start ditching the ruling party and the governor will end up toppling the ruling party. This will be a sad spectacle for democracy. This is what the court observed today. The court also pointed out that calling for a trust vote just on the grounds of differences within a ruling party can topple an elected government, and in the case of the Maha the differences were within one party while the alliance was of three separate parties. The scathing remarks clearly point a finger at the role played by the then governor Bhagat Singh Koshyari. The 3-year-old Uddhav Thackeray-led Sena NCP Congress coalition in Maharashtra lost power after a coup in the Shiv Sena by Eknath Shinde. He went on to form a new government with the BJP in June last year. Koshyari had asked for a test of majority, but Uddhav Thackeray resigned, facing defeat, making way for Eknath Shinde to take power. The factions led by Thackeray on the one side and Shinde on the other have since been fighting for recognition as the real Shiv Sena, leading to this protracted court battle. 8 months after the fall of the Uddhav government, is this belated exercise, or can it be used as a template for the actions of a governor in the future? Is the court seeking introspection? That's the discussion that we will do at this hour here on NDTV on Breaking Views. Let me first go across our two constitutional experts, PDT Acharya, who will be joining us in just a bit. But let me also bring in our other guests who are joining us on the show. Sanjay Hegde, leader and spokesperson of the Shiv Sena Shinde faction; Sajid Supariwala, leader of the Shiv Sena Uddhav faction; Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate of the Supreme Court. All of them here with us. Sanjay Hegde, coming first to you. Do the observations of the court put the Shinde faction on a sticky wicket, considering the court is indicating that the change of power was not fair?
Mahaji, first let me tell you, we are not the Shinde faction, but we are the Shiv Sena. The Shiv Sena, which has got the bow and arrow symbol, and Eknath Shinde ji is the Pramukh Neta of the Shiv Sena. Secondly, let me tell you that the observations made by the Honorable Supreme Court, the Honorable Supreme Court has spoken about the governor's role, but on a hindsight, they have also mentioned this very strong statement. They have said that the Uddhav Thackeray ji had lost the the mathematical equation, and that is a very important thing. When you do not have the members with you, how can you come to the floor of the house? And that is what exactly Uddhav Thackeray ji did. He resigned before the floor test, and the governor called Eknath Shinde ji to show his strength. And even when the Honorable Chief Minister Eknath Raoji Shinde showed his strength in the house, the observation of the Supreme Court was that there was no rift among the two other parties. But let me tell you here clearly that 13 of the MLAs from the NCP and the Congress abstained from voting. And that is very clear that there was a rift among the parties also. Apart from this, we say that from the first day, we are the actual Shiv Sena, and we had 40 MLAs who had signed and given a letter to the governor, and another 10 independents who had written a letter to the governor proclaiming loss of faith in Uddhavji's leadership and reposing faith in Eknath Shinde.
And that is exactly the point, isn't it, that the Supreme Court has made today in its observations, that the problems were with one party. You are alleging that MLAs from other parties also didn't turn up, which shows that there was factionalism within those parties as well. But that hasn't really come out ever. Many of them did, in fact, point out to the fact that they knew it was a lost cause. Some had also said that they got delayed. I mean, the reasons were various. But let me go across to Sajid Supariwala. Sajid, is this in some sense a vindication of the stand that your party faction was taking, but a little too late?
Yeah. First of all, let me assure you that whatever opinions are there are not only mine, but of the public sentiments of Maharashtra as of now. As the real caretakers of Maharashtra, you could say, or the real Shiv Sena, you could say, was only Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray, which Balasaheb Thackeray's father had formed at that time for the justice for the natives, also for people who are coming to Mumbai and make Mumbai and Maharashtra a better place. Now, what is happening? It's very saddened by the facts that the Supreme Court has already told that after 3 years, you had to go and meet the governor. Why didn't you meet the governor at that time? Why you took 3 years to meet the governor, that there is something wrong happening or some injustice happening? And only 40 MLAs cannot decide a party's fate. Let me tell you, today the public sentiments, by whatever has happened, the constitution, whatever the constitution says, you have been taken the symbol away.
So ultimately, they did decide the fate of both the party and the government, whether it was unfortunate for you, unfortunate for the other side, but that's the reality at the moment. Sanjay Hegde, I want to come to you. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Sajid Supariwala. Sanjay Hegde, how can the court's observations now going forward be used? Because in this case, the government has already changed in Maharashtra. The other government has been in power for 8 months now. Going forward, how do you use these observations? Because the governor's office has come under scrutiny several times in the past as well.
The first thing, Maha, is that observations are always tentative. They do not form the part of the final judgment. We can't say which way the judgment will go. However, these observations are worthy of being carefully pondered, and it is not unknown for constitutional courts to restore governments even if they have fallen.
Okay.
For instance, there is an instance in Pakistan which was used later in the Bombay judgment. The Nawaz Sharif's government was restored by the courts. So if the entire process was wrong, and what the court is asking was about the role of the governor. The governor is supposed to be the friend, philosopher and guide to whoever is the government of the day. The governor and the speaker are like referees in a game. They have become players in a game. They have manipulated the game, and particularly this Mr. Koshyari got a fair bit of notoriety for swearing in one government in the early hours of the day, that government falling, then the Aghadi government coming in, and if there was any sense of trying to set right his and go back to the earlier decision,
okay,
the governor definitely played the game. He should not be playing the game. He should not be touching the ball.
Okay. All right. I'll request all three of you to stay on with us. Let me go across to PDT Acharya, who's also joining us now. So my first question to you is, are the observations of the court today clearly stating that the then governor, Bhagat Singh Koshyari, was wrong?
Well, as Mr. Hegde has said, this is an observation of the court in the course of the hearing. So it may indicate the mind of the court or may not. Ultimately, after all, it all depends on what judgment comes out of the court. But so far as the governor's role is concerned, certainly Supreme Court has made certain observations which show that the court is not very happy about the way in which the governor had acted. That is true. But if you permit me to go ahead and say something about what actually happened or what exactly is the issue in Maharashtra, if you permit me, I will express my views about it. No, in Maharashtra, actually, basic issue was the application of anti-defection law. Petition was filed, and all the rest of the things happened after that. The basic issue needs to be decided is whether or how many people have defected, and who can issue the whip, whose whip is legitimate. So the entire thing hinges on that question.
Okay. But sir, as far as the role of the governor is concerned, and today the court has used these words during their observations, precipitating the fall of the government. Do you think Bhagat Singh Koshyari ended up doing that?
Well, see, the governor has called for a floor test. He asked the chief minister to hold a floor test to prove his majority. But the chief minister did not wait for that. Chief minister resigned before that. Actually, so the floor test was not held as per the direction of the governor. The floor test was not held at all. So what is the impact of this, or what is the implication of that? There was no floor test. And the chief minister resigned on his own, and then all the other developments took place in Maharashtra. So I do not know what exactly the court is going to do about that.
Okay.
If the floor test had been held, then things would have been slightly different.
Okay. Sir,
Because there was a...
Sir, I'm interrupting you there, sir, but I want to understand that when there is a crisis of this nature, what is the duty of the governor? What should he be doing? Should he be seeking to ensure that the government that is in place should function smoothly despite differences? Is it his responsibility to get the government to work and not to look at the other option of perhaps helping install another government?
See, when there is a crisis, political crisis, actually the question is, what should the governor do?
Yes.
Certainly, the governor has a constitutional responsibility to ensure that the government he is sworn in enjoys majority in the House all the time. That is his constitutional duty. He has to ensure that the government enjoys majority at all times. Now, some political developments take place, and people talk about splitting a party and people moving away from a party and things like that. But the governor is not required or supposed to act on rumors or hearsay and ask the chief minister to immediately hold a floor test. That is not what the governor is supposed to do. He has to wait and he has to make sure that things are happening in such a way that there is genuine doubt about the majority of the government.
All right. Okay.
And if the government doesn't have a majority, now that has to be decided on the floor of the House. But before that, when should the governor act? At what point of time? He has to ensure, he has to satisfy himself fully on the basis of very credible evidence that the government has lost majority. He cannot merely act on the basis of newspaper reports or the hearsay.
Absolutely, sir. Final question that I want to ask you, and this has been asked several times over because of the manner in which even in the past we have seen the governors coming under scrutiny, under the scanner. Can a governor be bipartisan? Because unfortunately the appointments more or less are always political in nature.
See, the governors, most of the governors are political appointments. I mean, they are either serving politicians or retired politicians. That was not what was envisaged by the constitution makers. They thought that the governor would be above politics and he may not be a practicing politician in any case. That was what was conceived of by the constitution makers at that time. But that has not happened. It is only politicians who get to be appointed or retired bureaucrats. And more politicians, and of course, retired bureaucrats are also appointed governors. And many governors do act at the behest of the center. So they think that they are agents of the center. Although the Supreme Court had made it very clear in some of his judgments that the governors are not mere agents of the central government. They cannot act as agents. They are independent authority, constitutional authorities, and they should act independently in such crisis situations. But that is not what we have seen. So, to say that the governors are acting in a partisan manner, etc., that is stating the obvious. But that is not what the constitution makes envisaged. That is all what I can say on this point.
PDT Acharya, many thanks for joining us here, sir, on this discussion. Let me go back to our other guests who are joining us on the show. Krishna Hegde, coming back to you. Are the observations today something that weaken the case of your side?
No, I don't think so at all. The other thing, let me add to what Mr. Acharya said. He said that there were rumors. See, this whole thing and this entire drama was played out on television and was in the public domain. And everyone was aware that around 50 MLAs had given a letter to the governor, governor of that time, Mr. Koshyari ji, saying that they had lost confidence in Mr. Thackeray ji's leadership. And therefore, they had all shifted base and, elected their own leader.
Very
Secondly, having said this, even this today,
Mr. Kochari was...
Mr. Supariwala, can I please continue? Please do not
but what I'm trying to explain to you is that...
Secondly, you can take your own turn to speak, not when I'm speaking. You will get your own turn, please. Secondly, today we have around 180-85 MLAs who are supporting this government. And whether it is the BJP, whether it's the Shiv Sena, or whether it's independent, there are over 185 MLAs who are supporting this government on the floor of the House.
Cannot decide whose party
and
it is.
The second thing is, out of the House of around 288, the Congress, NCP and the Uddhav faction do not have even 100 MLAs. So the mathematical equation is out of focus. There's no chance they can ever come in again, and therefore it's a lost case. And let me tell you that the Honorable Supreme Court will also look into this matter.
Decide that.
This is one part of the observation which they made. But in the hindsight, they have also said that Uddhav Thackeray ji has lost the mathematical equation. That is a very strong and important statement which the Honorable Supreme Court has observed. And I think that is most important.
You know what, Sanjay, Krishna Hegde, sorry, I want to point out another observation of the court that you seem to be missing out on, and that the court said that people will start ditching a ruling party and the governor will end up toppling a ruling party. This is a sad spectacle for democracy. If the governor enters any area which precipitates the fall of the government. Krishna Hegde?
See, the matter is sub judice, so I don't want to comment on it. But however, saying this, let me tell you, the governor has not precipitated the fall of this government. It is the disillusionment of the MLAs who are unhappy with the functioning of Uddhav Thackeray ji.
Only MLAs can decide.
And because of inaccessibility that the people have left the leadership of Uddhav ji. Also that the NCP was taking over all the development funds and the MLAs were not going to able to work in their constituencies. That was another crucial matter. And therefore, it was not the question
Sajid Supariwala, answer that point. Answer that point that has been made by Krishna Hegde, that it was not the governor who precipitated the fall, but the MLAs who were disenchanted with the government. Sajid Supariwala, Krishna Hegde, just let him answer that point that you made. That the MLAs were disenchanted, they would have left none anyway.
He would not like it. Can I go on talking when he is talking? He will not like it.
You continue if you want. I can answer to you later on. If you want to continue,
no, Sajid Supariwala, you answer this particular point first, and then we'll go back to our other speakers. Go ahead.
It's a very beautiful point that Mr. Hegde himself has made, that they were not being heard and everything. Mr. Eknath Shinde was holding a ministerial portfolio that time, and he realized, or whoever ministers under him, or the 40 MLAs who have gone away, are realizing now that they have not been heard after 3 years. When they were enjoying the power, that time they did not realize that. After 3 years, they are realizing that they were not being heard.
I think this is very childish talk. Disillusionment takes time. Disillusionment takes time. It doesn't happen in one day.
After 3 years, we realized
that why after 3 years? Obviously, it will take a few months or years for disillusionment to come in.
The court also observed today, the court also decided and told you there was reprimanded there, the party, the person who were, that why did you realize after 3 years, and how and why, like that every MLAs will go away from every party and they will topple the government.
There is no reprimanding.
All right, just hold on to your thoughts, both of you. Just hold on to your thoughts, and that is where the anti-defection law, Sanjay Hegde, comes into play. As PDT Acharya was saying that should have been looked into. Sanjay Hegde, what would you say about that?
anti-defection law says that there is now no provision for a split. If the party merges with another party and then 2/3 of the MLAs say yes to that merger, then the merger goes through, and that merger is a shield if anybody says that you have defected. That is not what has happened. Here what has happened is that a certain portion of the MLAs first split and went over and then formed a new government. Now they claim that the party is theirs. The Election Commission has, for the purposes of the symbols order alone, even given these MLAs the party symbol, the erstwhile symbol of the party. That all these things, as to who the real party is, they are always determined at the next election. But what this episode in Maharashtra has shown is that the anti-defection law or the 10th schedule to the constitution can often be rendered toothless and a dead letter, subject to great money power, if and when the referees of the game begin playing the game. That is the
Sanjay Hegde,
and the governor.
In that scenario, what would the governor's real role have been?
The governor's real role, let's say 20 MLAs came to him and said, like, we have lost faith in the government. What he should have said was, there is the assembly, go to the assembly, move a no confidence motion, and let things be thrashed out on the floor of the house. Instead, what happened was that the entire process of defection was protracted. Thereafter, the governor asked for a floor test, and there, to my mind, Mr. Thackeray made a mistake by not having the floor test. If you go back to the 1990s, you should remember that Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee ran a 13-day government and lost it on the floor of Parliament. But the speeches which were made on the floor of Parliament resonated, and he came back into power. Mr. Devegowda and Mr. Gujral also made speeches. They did not come back. Let things be decided on the floor of the House. Let the referees not become players in the game. Only then can the constitutional machinery work.
Krishna Hegde, a very important point that Sanjay Hegde is making there is that the referees should not become players. Is that the biggest perhaps embarrassment in this whole situation now with the observations of the court, is that the referee did indeed become a player? Is that what the court is today indicating?
I don't think so. This is an initial observation, but let me also correct Mr. Sanjay Hegde ji. It's a good friend of mine. That, you know, the anti-defection law, the magic figure was 37. And we had not only crossed the 37 figure, but already gone to 40 and 50.
But
so
sir, weren't the numbers going up because the entire process was so protracted and long? MLAs were going from one place to another in the country.
No, I don't think that it was precipitated by that decision. I would tell you that there was a disillusionment within the party. And even today, if you go to see, another former minister, Deepak Samant, has quit Uddhavji's faction and come into Eknath Shindeji's Shiv Sena. So there is still disillusionment. Even the senior most leader of Uddhavji's faction, Subhash Desai, yesterday
so
his
many
son
could
Bhushan
also
Desai
call it lure for power. What you are calling disenchantment, some people could call it lure for power. But Sajid Supariwala, the MVA has lost the government now in Maharashtra. What do you see from this entire case being fought in the court? What would be the takeaway for your faction?
See, there has been time and again, I have been saying some things, certain things on my people who have been agreeing with me have been saying the same things with the court had asked them today, that how could the governor himself make sure that the government is being toppled, the state government is being toppled. I mean, the governor has a certain responsibilities, constitutional efforts should have been there instead of just going by hearsay. And secondly, not being partisan towards somebody or being partial towards somebody. It should have been a very constitutional effort by the governor. already done and spoken about that long back. It has been going on. The debates have been going on. Today, I just want to say one more thing that the court has realized. Time and again, we have said that we have full faith in the judiciary of our country. And we stand by that. And today it has been proved. And very soon it will be proved that definitely Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray, that's
right.
the original Shiv Sena will be back in power very
all I will
soon,
say at this
inshallah.
juncture, Sajid Supariwala, is that clearly at this present juncture, these are observations. So concretely, nothing has been proved so far. We'll wait for the final judgment in this case, but certainly the observations are scathing as far as the office of the governor is concerned and the role that the governors can play
before I take
under
your leave,
these
I
circumstances.
want to add one thing. Can
Sajid Supariwala, Sanjay Hegde and Krishna Hegde.
Can I add something? I want to add something on before going.
Sir, I can give you only 10 seconds.
Okay. If you want to see how the government is going on, how the Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray Shiv Sena, the original Shiv Sena is performing, you can see the sentiments of the people around us and with us on the ground. And when the elections happen, we will take it.
We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. Many thanks.
Did not work.
Many thanks to all three of you for joining us here on this discussion. With that, we're taking a very quick break. News and updates will continue. Stay with us.